I was asked to do a longer recording of this to explain my findings. Most of my research in this comes from my 1914 dictionary, but I have tried to support it with more recent research as well. My reason behind the research was because there's been so much information coming out in the alternative media to do with Tartaria that I felt the need to sort of research it for myself. Sometimes I feel that if something's gone viral, then there's maybe an alternative motive behind it, and I wanted to research a bit more about Tartaria, but from the perspective of an antique history book or an antique dictionary. So here we learn that Tartarian means hellish. Yet in the conspiracy realm, it's considered some high-tech utopia. So that's quite a contrast. A utopia it's considered today, whereas in the past it's hell. It stems from the word Tartarus from Greek mythology. It's the underworld, Hades or hell. So let's look at the people, the Tartars. The Turkic branch of the Ural Altaic family, embracing the Turks, Cossacks and the Kyrgyz Tartars. Also the dialects spoken with the peoples of were Turkic. Also there is Chinese Tartary. Ethnologists at the time actually considered the Tartars or the Tatars a race of their own. The changing of the name from Tartars to Tatars could be to add confusion to history maybe. States the Mughals in the 13th century came and ravaged Europe as well. It says one of the descendants of these medieval Mongols, Turks, Mughals and Russianized Tartars now dwell in Europe and Russia or Russia. The location of Turkey and Russia are very interesting because that holds a significant history in itself, which we'll get to later. But Tartar also references someone with a savage temper. Apparently the saying is to scratch a Russian and find a Tartar, which apparently means to find that one apparently inoffensive is unexpectedly the reverse. So our ancestors related Tartaria to hell. So the question is, did they relate the Tartars to hell as well? And I presume they did. So let's look at that geographical location, which is Khazaria. Khazaria was an empire, a Jewish empire. It existed from around 740 AD to 900 AD, or late 900. And you should bear in mind that the Jews ended up going to England in 1066. The Jews were invited by the Normans after the invasion to set up a new monetary system. This new monetary system was the tally sticks. So what is now acknowledged as the Khazarian Empire was that what the Europeans called Tartaria? And is Tartaria being rebuilt? We do know that there's a greater project going on in that area right now with lots of wars to ensure the enlargement of a certain nation. Is this why Tartaria has become such a big deal in alternative media, I wonder? I don't know. I've always been interested in the mysterious period of the Anglo-Saxons and before then as well, where there was the collapse of the Roman Empire. We're told very little about it and there seems to be very little known, or it's all hidden from us. One of the earliest Bibles to be written was the Geneva Bible, 1560. I'll be doing a video later on about Henry VIII's Witchcraft Act, or so-called Witchcraft Act, which didn't actually exist, but there were laws regarding Bibles being written which objected to what his Bible stated. There were very harsh consequences for that Bible, and I'm suspecting that it could have been the Geneva Bible. But this Bible had significant consequences against it, but I'll look into that in another video. The Protestants who wrote the Geneva Bible believed that Satan, who was loosed during the time of Pope Sylvester II. It was claimed that he was a necromancer or a sorcerer, and he was born in Chevron, now Savoy in France. It was he who made reformations that would negatively affect the Anglo-Saxons, the Celts, the Scots and the Irish. Ultimately, the world would become victim to this. And here's an example of what it says in the Geneva Bible. It simply points to Pope Sylvester II as to when Satan was loosed. By the many, Pope Sylvester II is considered a great scholar and teacher. He brought in Moorish and Arabic teachings into the Catholic Church. These included arithmetic, mathematics, and astronomy. Presumably these were forbidden beforehand. Following him would be Pope Nicholas II, who would bring in reformations to the papal system. Those election reforms would see the future authorisation for an impactful money regime in England and eventually the world. Despite attempts to later remove that monetary regime, it would later return under Cromwell. Ireland, amongst others, would become the target. The reformations meant that Pope Alexander II would be voted in. He was deeply involved in the Tartaria reform. He also authorised the Norman conquest in England, which would bring about a world monetary system. So let's look into Tartaria. What exactly is this? According to Wikipedia, there's not much to it. It was just a movement in the north of Milan requiring reformations. So let's see what my 1914 dictionary says about Tartaria, shall we? They were a religious sect from 12th century, founded in Milan that opposed marriage of priests, a branch of the Cathari Venetians who emigrated from Bulgaria and settled in Milan in the 11th century. So who are the Venetians and where is Bulgaria? Well, Bulgaria is where the Khazarian Empire was. As you can see, it's very close to Turkey. And what about the Venetians? Who are they? From a former major world religion founded in the 3rd century, the Venetians taught cosmology and dualistic cosmology. They taught multiple religions and spread through Aramic-speaking regions. So was this the new beginning of an all-inclusive one-world religion? Think about what polytheism is. It's tolerance, it's suppression. Suppression is oppression. So with this all happening in the late 900s within the Catholic Church, let's return now to England and 1066. We now know that the Roman Catholic Church authorised the conquest over England. The Jews were invited to England for the first time after the king needed to borrow money. Usury, that is, lending money with interest, was forbidden in Christian countries such as England. It should be stated that the Jews have a long history of expulsion from European nations. So why is this group frequently expelled from the countries? England was a Christian nation, and if you think about it, Jesus threw the tables of the money changers. It goes without saying that England was against money or usury systems. I'll do a later video on Boudica and the inheritance tax of the farming and landowners back in the Roman era. I believe this to be extremely relevant to the situation with usury as well. With the new usury and monetary system, many laws were passed as well. These laws were intended to prevent the Anglo-Saxons and Celts from being self-sufficient. For example, only the Norman noblemen were allowed to keep dovecotes. It was illegal to shoot the pigeons and doves, which ate the Anglo-Saxons' grains, causing famine. Acceptance of the usury saw Norman Christians legalised to become money changers too. Is that where the term Judeo-Christian comes from? It turns out later historical events would come from that area too. From that Khazarian Empire location we saw the Bolshevik Revolution. But even more recently, the narrative tells us that Israel and Ukraine, the old Khazarian or Tartarian empires, are both in wars. Is there a need to rebuild Khazaria or the Tartaria? If so, for what purpose? And whose purpose? Well, our monetary system is failing and collapsing. A new monetary system will need to be replacing this old one. And it looks as if a CBD, central bank digital currency, is going to be needed. Could it be that Khazaria is being prepared for new residents? Are there perhaps anticipations of exiles coming? Maybe a need to flee? Perhaps severe destruction in the west? Is it possible that those areas are being destructed so as to build back better? Maybe it's to launder money, and a reason to. Is it intended to be a safe space for those with riches? Who knows? But Tartaria has become a big deal in alternative media. So why exactly is that? Interestingly, it's considered a Russian conspiracy. Fancy that, Russian, the same location as the Khazarian Empire again. Why would anyone idolise hell? Or a place named after hell? Could it be that alternative media has been infiltrated, just like every other attempt to escape the hellish inferno? Was it warned in the Bible? After 1,000 years of peace after Jesus' millennial reign, Satan will be loosed for a little while. Could we be in Satan's season now? Is that answer in the Bible? It says, "Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, unless you receive her plagues." By voting, you are legitimizing their authority over you. I expect the Anglo-Saxons turned away. Democracy is rule by mob. Vote to have your rights taken away from you. The legislative system is a slave system. You vote for legislators. You're voting for your enslavement. This is how you fight back.